when we create a post, we need to attach it to a category ID so that you can be able to associate it with the category. And when we do that, it means that our posts table should have a category ID so that we can know the post created is associated with what category ID, and that will tell us what category name it's associated with. So I'm going to create the category ID column, and so I'll just copy this. Then I'll paste it here, and then I'll edit it to suit our needs. So we want the column to be category ID, and then it references ID on categories table, on categories, then on delete cascade. That means when we delete a category, we also delete the posts associated with it, so that we don't end up with a post that doesn't have a category. So save. So this is just a template. So to create the table, we'll have to run the migration. So we'll come here and say PHP artisan migrate. Then I'll migrate fresh, and what this will do is that it will drop all the migrations and run them again. So press enter, and then let's wait for it to run. So all tables are dropped successfully. Okay, still waiting to finish all the tables, and it's like we have an error. So let's see what the error is and how to fix it. So when I come here, the error is failed to open the referenced table categories. So when you come up here, this is the table that it failed to open, and that happened because, let me explain why that happened. When you go to our migrations, these migrations, the tables get created depending on when these migrations were created. So when you look at this was created on 11th and this on 23rd. So this table will be created first, and when the posts table is created, it tries to reference the categories table, and it cannot get it because it's not yet created. So to fix this, we will have the categories table created first, so that when the posts table is created, it can be able to reference the categories table. So I'll come here, this is 23, this is 11. So I'll change this 11 to something higher than 23. So I'll take 24. So I'll come here, rename, and change that 11 to 24. So that means now the categories will be created first, and then the posts table will be created second. So when the posts table is created and it tries to reference the categories table, the table will have been created, so we should not have an error. So I'll rerun the command. Let's see what happens. I believe this should work, so we should not have an error, but let's see if it will work. Yes, and it has worked. So now if you go to our table, you can see here we don't have a category ID, but when we refresh, now we have a category ID and a user ID. So when we are creating a post, we need to attach it to a category ID, and it should be in this table. So I'll come here, go to my project, refresh, and now we are logged out because we dropped all the tables, so we don't have a user in the database. We need to register again. So I'll come here, then I'm going to register again, and I'll use the same credentials, then register, create post. So before creating post, we need to have a drop down here where a user can select the tag that they want to associate with the post that they are creating. So I'll go to this view, then I'll go, here is the view. I already have the drop down, so I'm just going to uncomment it, and it's just HTML. Let's see how it looks like. Refresh, and this is how it looks like. You click here, then you can select the category that you want. So go back to the view. This is just, there is no any Laravel, it's just a drop down. So here we have a label, then we have a select tag with the name attribute with the value of category ID. Then we have an option here which is disabled, select option, and that is this one. So it is disabled, you cannot click on it. Then we are hard coding the values of, we are hard coding the options. Here the entertainment, name of the category, and the ID, we are hard coding them. So let's display them dynamically here from the database. And before we do that, we need to create the categories. So I'll come here, refresh. So I'll create the first one, I'll call it sports. Another one, I'll call it nature. So now we have two categories in the database, sports and nature. So let's go ahead and display them dynamically. So I'll come here, I'll pass the categories into this view first. So I'll go to the controller, and here in the create controller, I'll copy this to fetch all the categories and paste this here. Then I'll pass the categories into the view. So I'll say compact, then categories, then save. So this view now has the access to the categories. Go to the view, and down here I'm going to say at for each categories as category, then I'm going to cut this, paste it here. We no longer need this, so I'll delete it. Then here, instead of hard coding health, I'm going to say category name. Copy this, and here we are going to say category ID. In here we will output the category ID, then save. Let's see if this is working. Go back, refresh, and yes, it does. So we have sports and nature. So first let's confirm if you can be able to grab their IDs. So when you are here, when you click submit, the data gets sent to blog.store. So let's go to that controller, to that method, sorry, blog.store. Here it is. So first of all, let's die and dump, then request the category ID. Category ID. So I'm grabbing this from where is it? Here. So the name attribute has the category ID value, so that's what I'm grabbing. So let's see if that is working. So I come here, I provide anything as well, anything, then I select the first one, then I try to submit, and yes, you are grabbing the ID 1. Let's try the other one, nature, submit, and yes, you are grabbing the ID 2. So let's go ahead and validate it, since now we see that we can grab it. I don't need this, I don't need this. So here I'll copy this and delete all this. Then here I'll have a comma, and I'll validate it first. And I'll say it's required. Save. Let's have the error message logic. So I'll come here and I'll copy this Then below here I'll paste that, and I'll change this from image to category ID. Then save. Let's see if that is working. So I'll go back, then I'll refresh, click submit, and yes, it's working. So we have the category ID field is required, and this is not user friendly, so this should be changed to something like the category field is required. And I will not do that because we already covered that in section 17, lesson 17, where we learned how to customize error messages. So if you want to do that, you can do it. If you've forgotten, you can check out that lesson, and you can change it by yourself. So with that said, we are all good. So now let's go back to the controller, and now we want to grab that category ID. We want to request it if it gets validated. So I'll copy this, paste it here, and change the title to category ID. So category ID. What have I done? Let me undo. Control D, Control Z. Have this here, then I'll grab this title, Control D, yeah, then change it to category ID, category ID. So now we are able to grab the category ID from the form. Then after that, we want to, the post has a category ID, so we can come here and copy this, then paste it down here, and say the post category ID, category ID. So the post category ID, not D, ID. The post category ID is the same as this, and this is whatever we will grab from the form. Then save. Let's see if that is working. So I'll come here, I'll do a refresh, then I'll say nature is life, choose an image, and I'll go with this one, select an option, so choose the nature category. Then here I'll just say anything, so I'll just grab this and have it here, then submit. And now we have a problem trying to get property ID of none object. And when you scroll down, here is the none object. We can see that here it's highlighted, so this is the error. And that is happening because, let me scroll up. So here we are checking the latest post, then its ID. So first of all, we can shorten this. You don't have to say take one. If you do this, it will still work the same. So we are trying to get the latest post, and now this is a fresh application. We don't have a latest post. That's why it's saying, that's why we're getting this error of ID of none object, since we don't have a post object. So to fix that, what we will do is that I'll copy this, then I'll come here, I'll cut it, not copy it, and I'll use an if statement. I'll say if, not at if, then I'll check, I'll paste that, remove all this, remove all this first. Wait, let me have that back. So I want to remove this and say it's not equal to, I'll explain in a moment, it's not equal to null, then do something. So I'm checking if post latest first is not equal to null. That's when we should apply this logic. So we are saying if we have a post in the database, that's when we should apply this logic. Else, if you don't have a post, then the post ID should be equal to 1. Then save. So now we are checking if you don't have a post in the if you have a post in the table, if it's not equal to null, then that's when we can apply this. Then if we don't have a post in the table, so we want to set the post ID to be 1. So we are not fetching any. So as of now, we don't have any post, so we are not running this logic, so we should not get an error. So let's see if that is working. Come back, refresh, and there it's working. Post created successfully. Let's go to the database, refresh, and there we go. Here is our post, and the category ID is number 2. So now we are able to attach our post to a category ID. So in the next lesson, let's learn how to implement the eloquent relationship between a post and a category ID. That's it for this lesson. If this video has been of any help to you, kindly consider supporting my work by subscribing, leaving a comment and a like. Cheers.